Legislative process of Article 23 on the fast track. Former Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying says Article 23 is more lenient than similar laws in some other countries. And more trouble facing TikTok in the U.S. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. The legislative process for Article 23 of the Basic Law started today as the government gazetted the Safeguarding National Security Bill this morning. To fast-track the process, the Legislative Council completed the first and second readings of the bill in quick succession, with the bill committee set to hold additional meetings this Saturday and Sunday. Now the draft security legislation covers 5 new offences, including treason and insurrection.
政府法案首讀。
The first reading for the Safeguarding National Security Bill took place at the Legislative Council at 11 this morning. In around 10 to 20 minutes, the legislature completed the first reading and motioned for the second reading.
National security risks remain imminent. The earlier we complete the legislative work, the sooner we can guard against national security risks.
LegCo President Andrew Leung said there is no deadline for the Legislative Council to complete the legislation process, but he said all lawmakers share a common goal to have Article 23 legislated as soon as possible.
I also fully agree that there is a genuine and urgent need for the legislation. We would spare no effort and work together to plug the national security loophole.
The bill, over 200 pages in length, covers 5 new security offences, with more public spotlight on 2 crimes: acts with seditious intent and leaking state secrets. On acts with seditious intent, the proposed crime covers intentions to cause hatred or contempt against the government, residents of different regions of China and Hong Kong. That's unless the intentions are to give an opinion or point out an issue to improve the matter or system. The offence is liable on conviction to imprisonment of up to 7 years. If collusion with external forces is involved, the conviction carries a maximum 10-year prison term, much higher than the current 3-year sentence. If incitement of public disorder or violence is involved, the bill stated that only proof of the incitement is needed, and it's not necessary to prove there's intention to cause public disorder or violence. On state secrets, they include political, economic, social, and technological development-related secrets. Unlawful possession, acquisition, and disclosure of these secrets is liable to imprisonment for 3 to 10 years. The draft bill also stated clauses of exemption. First, it is a defense that the person did not know the information is a state secret or surrender the information to a police officer. The bill also included a list of specified disclosure, which refers to state secrets allowed to be revealed. They include any revelation that serves the public interest on matters that can seriously affect the government's performance of its functions or pose a serious threat to public order, safety, or health. But the whistleblower should take steps to consider any other practicable alternative actions before making the disclosure. Also, a newly introduced crime of external interference and organizations engaging in activities endangering national security. That can incriminate anyone who participates in an activity planned or led by an external force, and if the person cooperated with it, acted under its control, supervision, or direction, or on its request to bring about an interference effect. They include influencing the executive authorities of the central and SAR governments or the elections. It carries a maximum prison term of 14 years. The draft legislation for Article 23 covers 5 types of crime. Treason and insurrection carry the heaviest legal consequences, a maximum penalty of life imprisonment. The bill also intends to criminalize unlawful drilling and participation in banned organizations. The crime of treason applies to Hong Kong residents who are Chinese citizens with extraterritorial effect, meaning the law applies to acts committed outside or in the SAR. Offenders of treason are those who join an armed force that does not belong to China with intent to prejudice the situation of China in a war, assist an enemy at war with China, instigate an invasion of China, or hold intent to endanger the sovereignty of China using force or threatens to use force. Offenders can be subject to a maximum penalty of life imprisonment. If a Chinese citizen knows that another person has committed, is committing, or about to commit treason, he or she must disclose that to a police officer. That's unless the information is already made known in the public domain. But exemptions can be made for legal professional privilege, or else offenders can be put behind bars for up to 14 years. The draft legislation also stated that anyone without the permission of the Secretary for Security or the Commissioner of Police who provides specified drilling is liable to 7-year imprisonment upon conviction. With planning, control, or financial support from external forces, the sentence is up to 10 years in prison. Participants will also be subject to a 5-year prison term. Life imprisonment too for colluding with an external force to damage or weaken a public infrastructure of the country or the SAR. Without the collusion, the maximum penalty is 20 years. It's a security offense too to sabotage facilities including government offices, public means of transport such as the MTR and the airport, as well as facilities providing public service such as water and electricity. Also covered, the online digital realm. The abuse of computer or electronic systems will constitute an offense. Currently, the government can publish a notice in the Gazette to ban the operation of local organizations. Stepping up that power, the bill stated anyone who manages the prohibited organization can be imprisoned for up to 14 years and fined $1 million. Those who took part in its activities or offered assistance can be imprisoned for 10 years and fined $250,000. Incitement to join a body or offering premises for the body's meetings will also constitute an offense. Under Article 23 of the Basic Law, suspects can be detained by the police for longer. Suspects may also be prevented from consulting particular lawyers. Mo Sang-ai reports.
Police can detain suspects for 48 hours under the current legislation. Under the draft bill, police can extend the detention period for national security offense suspects for up to 14 days. To obtain an extension, police must apply to a magistrate who can then extend the detention period for a week. Another 7 days can be granted after the first one expires. The bill stipulates that the suspect may not be allowed to consult a particular lawyer during the 48-hour detention period in police custody, depending on certain situations. That includes if the suspect's consultation with a lawyer over the detention period will endanger national security or cause bodily harm to others. The government also proposed a removal of preliminary inquiries, proceedings during which a decision is made if sufficient evidence is available to justify a trial. The bill also deals with fugitives who have fled Hong Kong for more than 6 months, such as the former lawmaker Ted Ho. The bill states those fugitives will be under a series of restrictive measures, including the cancellation of their HKSAR passports. News 9, TVB News.
Some lawmakers who are deputies at the 14th National People's Congress rushed back to the city to take part in today's legislative process. This as former Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying stressed the security bill is balanced and lenient. Timothy Lee reports.
Legislators who are also deputies at the 14th National People's Congress had to rush back to the SAR to handle the legislative work on Article 23. Lawmaker Gary Chan said the deputies were happy to make their way back to the city even at such short notice, and that the legislative work fits the expectations of both lawmakers and the community. Bills Committee Chairman Martin Liao noted the meetings on Saturday and Sunday on the legislation of the security law will last for a total of 16 hours. He noted the long duration and intensity of the meetings will speed up the legislation process and, most importantly, ensure national security. Sharing his views on Article 23 legislation, former Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying emphasized the security law is more balanced and more lenient when compared with those of some Western countries and Singapore. He added Article 23 fits the practical needs of the SAR. Former NPC Standing Committee member Tam Yu-chung believes Hong Kong will further gain the central government's trust after the bill is passed. Meanwhile, in an article named Peace in Hong Kong and Macau, published by state media Xinhua News Agency, said the security law article clearly states its powers and restrictions of the police. It added that the article removes suspicions about restrictions on freedom of speech and media freedom. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The second plenary meeting of the second session of the 14th National People's Congress was held in Beijing today. It was attended by President Xi Jinping and other state leaders. Zhao Leji, chairman of the NPC Standing Committee, delivered a work report saying that the body strengthened the legislation of multiple fields over the past year. They include the food safety laws, as well as the revision of anti-espionage and state secrets laws. Laying out the agenda for 2024, the report stated that the central government will continue to safeguard the constitutional and legal order enshrined in the Constitution and Basic Law for Hong Kong and Macau. Efforts will be dedicated to implementing the SAR's legal system and mechanisms to protect national security as well. In the U.S., a bill that could lead to the popular video sharing app TikTok being unavailable in the country is quickly gaining traction in the House. The measure gained the support of House Speaker Mike Johnson and could soon come up for a full vote in the House. The bill advanced out of committee on Thursday in a unanimous bipartisan vote of 50-0. The bill requires ByteDance Limited, which is based in Beijing, to divest TikTok within 180 days of enactment of the bill. Those applications will be prohibited in the United States. It creates a narrow process to let the executive branch to prohibit access to an app owned by a foreign adversary if it poses a threat to national security. Some lawmakers and critics of TikTok have argued the Chinese government could force the company to share data on American users. TikTok says it has never done that and wouldn't do so if asked. Welcome back. U.S. President Joe Biden delivered a defiant State of the Union speech as he faces a likely showdown with predecessor Donald Trump in November's presidential election. Biden hit out at the Republican frontrunner for espousing resentment, revenge, and retribution, and for jeopardizing freedom at home and abroad. On Ukraine, Biden put forward his case for supporting Kyiv and ensuring humanitarian aid reaches starving Palestinians in Gaza. He also said the U.S. is happy to compete with China, but does not want conflict. Nasri Karim has more.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
His entrance was grand, and it needed to be. In the weeks leading up to his State of the Union address, 81-year-old U.S. President Joe Biden has been mocked about his age and memory. His speech was also a platform for a second term as president, with Biden likely to face off with Donald Trump in November. And the Democrat president delivered a defiant address.
Not since President Lincoln and the Civil War have freedom and democracy been under assault at home as they are today. What makes our moment rare is that freedom and democracy are under attack both at home and overseas at the very same time.
He then went on to joke about his age, saying that his experience in politics makes him sharper.
I know it may not look like it, but I've been around a while. When you get to be my age, certain things become clearer than ever. I know the American story. Again and again, I've seen the contest between competing forces in the battle for the soul of our nation, between those who want to pull America back to the past and those who want to move America into the future.
Biden sounded a warning about Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying the U.S. must continue to back Ukraine and provide funding for weapons, a move being held up by the GOP.
If anybody in this room thinks Putin will stop at Ukraine, I assure you he will not. Ukraine can stop Putin if we stand with Ukraine and provide the weapons.
With the U.S. and Israel differing on Gaza policy, particularly the lack of humanitarian aid going into the Strip, Biden was forthright in his message to the government of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Israel must allow more aid into Gaza to ensure humanitarian workers aren't caught in the crossfire. For the leadership of Israel, I say this: humanitarian assistance cannot be a secondary consideration or a bargaining chip. Protecting and saving innocent lives has to be a priority.
Biden also talked about the U.S. relationship with China, rejecting criticism that Washington is falling behind Beijing. Nasri Karim, TVB News.
Sweden has formally joined NATO as the 32nd member of the Transatlantic Military Alliance. Sweden's membership had been held up due to objections by NATO members, Turkey and Hungary. Turkey expressed concern that Sweden was harboring and not taking enough action against Kurdish groups that it regards as terrorists. Hungary's populist President Viktor Orban has shown pro-Russian sentiment and not shared the alliance's determination to support Ukraine. After months of delay, Turkey ratified Sweden's admission, and Hungary did so this week. Sweden, along with Finland, which joined NATO last year, have now both abandoned long-standing military neutrality. U.S. President Joe Biden congratulated Sweden on its admission and said it was a sign that Russian President Vladimir Putin's intervention in Ukraine had united rather than divided the alliance. The U.S. military will set up a temporary port off the coast of Gaza to join an international push to open a sea route delivering aid. U.S. President Joe Biden mentioned it in his State of the Union address as Washington airdropped more aid onto the Gaza coast. Officials say at least 20 people have died from malnutrition in Gaza, with the northern part severely affected with around 700,000 people facing famine. NBC has the story.
On an airbase in Jordan, we were given an inside look at what has become a last resort for getting aid into Gaza, air dropping food and humanitarian supplies.
So the planes have already been loaded. These are C-130 cargo planes.
The mission today was run by the Jordanian military, a close U.S. ally. We watched the crew do its last-minute briefs until it was time for takeoff. The food aid was on pallets, and the bags on top are the parachutes, fixed with yellow ripcords to open them. First, we flew over Israel, the Israeli military granting permission, deconflicting the airspace so the plane isn't accidentally shot down. Israel looks peaceful from above. Then we reached Gaza, where the damage is clear and extensive. After Hamas's October 7th massacre, Israel has bombed and cut off Gaza so severely that people are now facing starvation. Officials from Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry say at least 20 people have already died from malnutrition.
They've just given the signal that they're ready to drop. We are now over northern Gaza. Any moment now, these packets of food aid will begin parachuting down. Every bit helps, but aid groups say this is not a solution.
The meals are for more than 20,000 people, but it's a drop in the bucket. 2.3 million people need help below. But for now, it's the only thing coming from the sky in Gaza that doesn't explode.
Today is International Women's Day. Events marking the occasion took place globally. Officially recognized by the United Nations in 1977, International Women's Day is a national holiday in about 20 countries, including Russia, Ukraine, and Afghanistan. Women marched in the South Korean capital calling for changes to gender inequality. The marchers were voicing their disapproval at the current South Korean administration for not doing enough to balance gender equality. They urged South Korean people to vote for candidates and political parties that will fight for women's rights in the upcoming election. In Bangkok, some protesters dressed like pregnant laborers and marched in front of the Democracy Monument. In Moscow, flower markets were buzzing with customers looking to buy gifts for the special women in their lives. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.